Hi, I'm Kimberly Olushola, Assistant Professor of Reading at Grand Rapids Community College, and today I'm speaking with Dr. Elaine Richardson, Professor of Literacy Studies at The Ohio State University. Welcome, Dr. E.
Thank you.
I'd like to first say that you've authored several books and edited several books.
Yes.
Your latest book is entitled PhD to PhD.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your book, and specifically, what does the first PhD stand for?
It's actually my journey. I titled it PhD to PhD, How Education Saved My Life, because I really wanted to put a message out to anybody who has been downtrodden, written off, lost hope in yourself. So that first PhD is basically a stereotype for a woman who has become drug addicted in the hood, someone involved in the street life, someone who has gotten involved in sex work, human trafficking. But in my neighborhood, they called you a hoe. Okay. So it's po-ho on dope to PhD. So I'm playing on, from, I guess, out of control doctorate on the streets, right? Right. Education in the streets, which is really a form of death. It's a cycle of death when you're caught up in the street life. The things that you have to know to stay alive, the things that you have to unlearn to become more educated about yourself. So PhD to PhD, Doctor of Philosophy of English and Applied Linguistics, and how I went from the streets to earning that degree.
Okay. I was recently looking at your website,
and
I came across a quote by writer-filmmaker Dream Hampton.
Oh, yeah, I love Dream Hampton.
She said, and I want to quote this, "To call her story inspiring would be itself too plain a thing. Hers a heroic life." And I read your book the day I bought it. I read the entire book.
Thank you.
And I felt that it was mesmerizingly honest.
Thank you.
Truly.
Thank you.
Can you talk a bit about how you got the courage
to write my book?
To even write your book, to even put the words down on paper?
Well, like I said, I got involved in prostitution and drug addiction. And by the time I got on my journey to healing, I had 3 little kids. First I had 2, but then I wound up with 3. But all while my kids were smaller, we still lived in the same neighborhood where I did a lot of my drugging, street life, and there was still that going on in my neighborhood. So we would always be riding down the street and see people out there. And I would always tell my kids when they were little, "Mommy used to be out there." And they would say, "For real, Mommy? You used to be out there?" And I would say, "Yeah," and I always told them that because I never wanted anybody to be able to hurt them by, telling them that, your mama was a hoe or your mama was a drug addict, And as they got older, I would always tell them stories about things that happened to me when I was in the street life. And my oldest daughter, some of the things were funny. A lot of it was sad, but some of the stuff was funny too. And so my daughter would tell her friends, some of the stuff that, I told her. And sometimes she would come home with a friend and say, "Ma, tell us one of your whole stories." And so that's how I actually got the courage, because I would tell my daughter and her friends things that happened to me as cautionary tales, but it was very interesting to them. And when I finally got on the tenure track at Penn State, my daughter was asking me, "What are you writing?" Because I was revising my dissertation for my first book. You have to have a book to make tenure.
Right.
And she would ask me what I was writing, and I told her about, all the stuff that I was writing about, using African American language as a composition curriculum for speakers of African American language. And she was like, "It doesn't have anything in there about your life, the stuff that you went through on the streets and all that?" And I was like, "No, not this one." And so she was like, "Oh, Ma, I thought you were writing something that was going to help somebody."
Oh, interesting. Okay, all right.
So eventually I was able to write the book that I think, invites people who might feel like they may not fit into the academy. People who, and it doesn't necessarily have to be education, even though I think everybody, deserves an education, and everybody should have an education, but maybe their, thing is not getting, a PhD or a master's, but some goal that they want to reach.
Right.
And I want just to encourage people that even though you might have been written off, and felt hopeless, that as long as you have life, you still have another chance.
Okay. So, speaking of life and another chance, did you have someone help you with that process?
A bunch of people.
Okay.
A lot of people helped me.
Okay.
But most of all, and first and foremost, I always have to say my mother, after God, of course. But my mother never gave up on me. And I think that was a big reason for my recovery, is because I knew I could go home. And a lot of people who are drug addicted and, who have, basically been estranged from your family or doing things that that your family is not going to condone.
Right.
A lot of people can't go home. A lot of people get kicked out and they cannot go back. So my mother was just always there for me. My mother always let me come home. And some people feel like maybe if she had had a tougher love, that maybe I could have recovered sooner. But I just believe in the power of love, and for me, it worked for me to know that my mother was always there for me, even when I didn't know who I was. She was always in my ear. She was always reaching out for me, trying to remind me that I was worth something, trying to let me know that I didn't have to just kill myself. So first of all, my mother. Then, I could look back over my life and I could see where God just put people in my path all along the way. Even street people when I was out there, people who saved my life by telling me things, in a nick of time.
Right.
Or just being places where there was somebody to show me the way out. But when I finally did get back to Cleveland State University, I had tutors who sold into my life. One young lady in particular who took an interest in me, and she was like my coach, because I was, in these freshman writing classes, and the professors were like crossing out all my, everything I wrote. They were drawing red circles around it and writing all in the margins, Right. And when I finally met this tutor, she was actually trying to get the meaning out of what I was saying. She was reading my paper for content and not just to, look at the mechanics.
Right.
She was trying to get a sense of my story. And so the way that she read my paper, she was able to encourage me and tell me things like, when to fill a period, when to fill a comma, when you should break a paragraph. What they mean by thesis statement, all of that stuff that I did not know.
Right.
She was more like a coach, like, oh yeah, this is great. Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, this is funny. She was into it, and she showed me how to write for the academy, little by little.
Right.
Another professor told me that I spoke Black dialect. And he said that I should read this book called Talking and Testifying, The Language of Black America by Geneva Smitherman. And so by this time, I'm desperate to stay in school. I'm going to tutoring. I'm doing everything they tell me to do. So I read this book, and it just absolutely turned me on to, learning and what, she had to offer, which was a history of Black language, like how it came into being and the worth of it, where it came from. And it did something for my self-esteem. And it explained a lot of things to me that I had never heard before. Because all through school, your parents even tell you, watch how you talk.
Right.
Your teachers tell you, don't come in here with that ghetto language.
Right.
You're going to end up like a winehead on the streets. That's what our teachers told us. Right. They never had a name for it that was positive or that really explained what it was, and that connected it to your history and your culture. And so when I read that book by Geneva Smitherman, that was it for me. I knew what I wanted to study. I knew that this was something that I was, was feeding me. And so one Black History Month, she came to Cleveland State and she was the speaker. And I had a whole bunch of questions for her after her talk. And she said, girl, you sound like you have read a lot of stuff. I said, I tried to read everything with your name on it. And she asked me, had I ever thought about getting a PhD? Because by this time, I think I was a first-year master's student. She asked me, had I ever thought about getting a PhD? And I said, PhD? You think I could get one? But anyway, she became my mentor. I went to Michigan State University, and she trained me. And so that was like God put her in my life as someone who knew how to talk to me, who knew how to mentor me, who knew how to push me when I needed to be pushed. So there were just a lot of people like that God put in my life.
Okay. And so that takes me to my next question. This is a loaded question. It's loaded. Recently, I read an essay that you wrote in African American Rhetorics, where it mentioned that your story is a Black story of literacy, achieving in the face of a no-win situation. I've been in education for a few years, and I've noticed that students of color may be unsuccessful because of what you've referred to as the legacy of slavery in the classroom. And I know that kind of dealt with your early years at Cleveland. Would you say that this is the story of most people of color or even people of low income where they're trying to be successful in educational institutions?
Well, I would definitely say that for the most part, curriculum is not designed to empower people of color.
Okay.
It is designed to assimilate you into American society. It does not take into account in a deep way your language background, your linguistic background, the power circumstances for why you may be disempowered, why you are in the hood, why maybe you're the first person in your family to go to college. So there's a big disconnect, I think, even beginning in the lower grades, because when they even teach you phonics, they're teaching you the standardized phonics. So if you speak African American English, for example, if you speak that, and they're showing you WITH, and they're telling you that TH is f, but you pronounce it f with an F.
Right.
That's already a disconnect for you and they're not telling you that what you speak is a language system. They're telling you you're wrong and it's TH.
Right. Okay.
So it's a disconnect for many people of color. I wouldn't say for all,
right,
but for many, it's things like that it's disconcerting for you,
right,
until you learn how to play the game. That is, education. You have to get like your own education alongside the traditional recognized curriculum, because for the most part, you're not going to get it in school.
Right. Okay. So with that being said, I'm interested to know your thoughts from a student's perspective to now full-time faculty professor.
Yes.
What is the difference? How did you move from one point to the next? I know you talked about having help along the way.
I had a lot of help.
So how do you maneuver now?
Working with people like who may be from a background similar to mine.
Similar to yours, yeah. How do you work with those people now?
Well, my motto for everything really is Geneva Smitherman. Geneva Smitherman talked to me like a Black woman talks to, when I'm dealing with people from my community,
right,
I talk to them like Geneva Smitherman talked to me.
Okay. You're being yourself.
I'm being myself, and I'm real about some of the stuff that may not be right. you have to learn how to read critically under the line, but you got to know how to play the game. You have to know how to, you have to choose your battles. When are you going to negotiate this, and when are you, but you have to be twice as good. That still, stands the test of time. That's an old adage in the Black community, that you must be twice as good to get half as far.
Right.
Or else you're being done a disservice yourself, because you need to know. You need to know yourself, you need to know your culture, but you also need to know what you need to know.
Right.
You need to know that. Right. Geneva Smitherman helped me a lot with that, but with all of my students, no matter where they're from, no matter what race they are from, we talk about the politics of knowledge, the politics of just the powers that be, and how that affects the curriculum, and how we can change it if we know. But if you don't know, if you just think that people are poor and in the hood because they're lazy, and if you believe all the stereotypes, like,
right.
Well, if the parents cared, the students could learn how to read, or they would get further. Those are like really easy, naive statements to make about our society.
Right.
And so I talk to people about, I try to use readings that make us critically aware of what's going on in society, and how that fits into the educational system, and how we have to know better than just that first layer of, well, people are lazy and this is why they're poor.
Right. Okay, so just to try to reiterate, would you say then that instructors, faculty, need to learn more about the students that they are teaching in order to do that effectively?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes, I think you have a lot of people, somebody wrote a book called Why They Won't Learn From You. So if you don't make a personal connection, if you can't make a personal connection, I think that's a layer that's, blocking you from getting to a deeper place with your students. Because people, look at it as, like personal learning and official learning.
Right.
But I don't see it that way.
Okay.
Because I think that your personal learning should be connected to the society that you live in. Like, how can I make a difference? How can I change some of the things that I don't like in my community?
Right.
That's some education that is empowering. When you figure out, like how what do I need to learn to have a voice or to make a change in my community, stuff that I don't like. Even as far as getting the health services that I need, or economic situation that I'm in. If I can make that learning, like really relevant to a student, I think that gives people a hunger, because they can see the direct results of, like why I need to have this thesis statement here, and why I need to come with this certain warrant in my paper that, both whoever I'm writing to, they can, at least start at this agreed upon place with me.
Right. So it's not necessarily changing who a person is, a student is, but how to better themselves.
I think it is changing you too, though, because
Okay.
education is supposed to be transformative. So you do stay yourself to a certain degree. You stay true to who you are, but you're still growing, because education grows you. You right? For me, it's spiritual too.
Oh, right, definitely. Your motto: ignorance, low self-esteem, and shame are killers.
Yes.
When you know who you are, nobody can control you. So what aspect of your life helped you to form this motto?
A whole lot of it. I had a lot of low self-esteem growing up.
Okay.
One of the things was that my mom was a Jamaican immigrant, and nobody in my community, there were not Jamaicans that I knew of in Cleveland when I was growing up. And so my mother talked funny. And people asked me why our food smelled funny, and that sort of thing. So I had that was like a point of shame for me. I didn't like when people asked me why my mother talked funny. Another thing was my parents were older than everybody else's parents in the neighborhood. people used to ask my mother if I was her granddaughter when we rode the bus together. I didn't feel attractive. You know, I had all these things, and I don't like to say little things because they're really big.
Those are big things.
I had all these things that made me feel like I wasn't up to a level.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I got raped at a young age because I had low self-esteem and I wanted to be liked.
Mm-hmm.
So all these things were points of ignorance about my own worth, my own self-worth, my own cultural worth, my own background, who I am. So I had a lot of ignorance about myself. And when you have a lot of ignorance about yourself, it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I really believe that low self-esteem and ignorance and shame are killers.
Mm-hmm.
They really are, because once you feel shame of yourself,
Right.
there are a lot of things, you won't reach out for help. You know, you don't think you're good enough for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So those things are like intersectional chains that just get around your neck and, you know, keep you from growing.
Right. And so in turn, you want to help others grow.
Yes.
You have an after-school program.
I do. We're on hiatus this year
Are
because
you?
I'm on sabbatical.
Okay.
Hallelujah. But I work with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade girls, urban middle school. And these are the kinds of things we talk about. With 11, 12, and 13-year-old girls, we do a lot of it through pop culture, through, you know, interrogating lyrics, through even current events. We use a lot of media. But I learned a lot from them about what it means to be an 11, 12, and 13-year-old girl in today's world.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those girls are really smart. They're smart, and they catch on really quick. And they're doing some of the critical reading that I actually teach at The Ohio State University. They last year we studied the Trayvon Martin trial. And we studied Rachel Gentile, the star witness, and how the prosecuting attorneys talked to her, how the defense talked to her, and what were some of the underlying assumptions about, you know, who she was and, you know, who Trayvon Martin was.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were able to make a lot of good critical observations. So I think once you start training young people how to be critical about what goes into their brain,
Right.
they catch on.
Right. Right.
It's exciting too, working with them.
It is.
It's very exciting
And
and
you-
rewarding.
And you also have a conference that you have started.
Yes. Now the conference is still going on this year.
Okay.
But because I'm on sabbatical, other people are doing the heavy lifting.
Okay. All right.
My friend Dr. Treva Lindsay and another friend of mine, Dr. Tanya Saunders, are organizing it this year.
Okay.
But I started the Ohio State University Hip Hop Literacies Conference,
Okay.
which is a way of bringing together educators, political organizers, artists, families around positive, empowering uses of hip hop.
Okay.
So that's been very rewarding.
Okay. You're
Yeah.
very talented in many ways, very creative.
Thank you.
You're also a producer,
I'm a singer,
you're a
songwriter,
singer.
Yes.
You have a CD out?
I have a CD out, and I'm working on one now.
Are you?
Yes.
Okay, your latest is Elevated.
Elevated, yes.
Okay, and what
Yes.
made you decide to do that?
Well, I started singing, you know, when I was a
You were
little
young.
kid in church, and I always sang in the school choirs. I played violin all through when I was there. when I was not a juvenile delinquent, when I was in school, I played the violin and I sang in the choir and I was in the orchestra, and I always wanted to be a singer. My dad was a trumpet player, so it's kind of like in my genes to want to be in music. And I was writing songs all while I was in graduate school, but I didn't think I could be a performer again because I was in a PhD program. So my mind was boxed in, you know, like I can only do this.
Right.
But I came to see after a while that, you know, of course, I did need to focus on my dissertation and my PhD when I was a graduate student. But as I began to become more accomplished and achieve more things, I figured I can still sing, and I can still be a recording artist, and I can still be a performer. And, you know, that's my difference. I don't have to just choose one thing. If God gave me these different things that I can do, I want to do them all.
That's right.
Before I die.
That's right. That's right. And speaking of doing all kinds of things, I looked at your calendar.
It's kind of
Your
full.
calendar is full. How do
It's
you
kinda full.
manage all of that? I mean, you're a professor, you write songs,
Yes.
you perform,
Yes.
you grade papers.
Yes.
How do you manage to fit everything in? You have a family.
I have a family.
How do you fit everything in?
I've been learning how to put my whole self together on my journey. You know, like even when you asked me about the songwriting, I was trying to separate my musical mind and my musical self and my talented self from my academic self. And then I finally figured out I didn't have to. That my thought process about music and creative performance and expression can be a part of my teaching and a part of my research. So for example, what I do with the kids at the after school program, they have to create poetry, they have to create media projects around the stuff that they're using. So it's like critical media literacy, but it's also performance based.
Okay.
So I found ways to incorporate the things that I love together. I use my music also to raise funds for my high school alma mater. So I just figure out ways to bring my whole self together.
And give back to everybody in every way
'Cause
possible.
a lot of people gave to me.
Okay.
And that's what it's really, that keeps me healthy and well.
Right.
Giving back keeps you healthy.
Right. So quickly, your one-woman show,
Yes.
that is,
It is based, a friend of mine, Dr. Mary Weems, who's a professor, and she is also a creative writer and a playwright and a PhD. She edited my book, and so I told her that I wanted to create a one-woman play based on the book. And because she had read it, she picked the excerpts that she thought would be most powerful, and she, you know, put it into a play form. And so that's how my one-woman play came into being. And it's storytelling, monologues, and music and singing.
okay.
But it's about my life story.
And will you be performing that tonight at the Diversity
I will
Lecture
be
Series?
performing it tonight.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm so grateful
Yes.
to be a part of that series.
I'm
'cause
looking forward to that. I think it's
Thank
just
you.
yet another way to give back to people, to see how talented you are,
Thank you.
and to let our students know that never give up.
Never give
I know you
up. And
mentioned
you
that
don't even
before,
know
never
where you
give
can
up.
go.
Or who you can help.
You don't know where you can go. Yes.
Or who you can help.
Or who you can help.
Right. Well, again, mesmerizingly honest
Thank you.
in every way, shape, or form.
Thank
And
you.
you have a beautiful voice.
Thank you.
And I can't wait for everyone to see you, hear you, learn from you,
Thank you.
grow from you this
Thank
evening.
you.
So
Thank you
very
so much.
Again, seeing you at the TICA conference as well.
I know. That was
Uh,
awesome.
That was a wonderful experience for me. I needed it.
I
And it
did
was
too.
good to see someone like me doing the things that you're doing. So I
Thank you.
appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Hope to see you again real soon.
I hope so too. Thank you.
You're welcome.